Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here are the stories making our headlines this hour. Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulates Russian troops on liberating Ukraine's Luhansk region. The Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says shooting at the mall on Sunday was the worst possible nightmare. Plus, Australia's second largest city, Sydney, inundated by floods. A warm welcome again. Let's begin with a check-in on developments around the Russia-Ukraine war over the last couple of hours. Turkish officials are still detaining a Russian-flagged cargo ship off the Black Sea coast, which Ukraine says is carrying stolen grain. One official said today, upon request, the ship, named Zibek Zole, was halted off the port of Karazu. Allegations of stolen Ukrainian grain were being investigated thoroughly, according to the official, with Russia, the United Nations and third parties involved in talks. Meanwhile, British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is calling for a new Marshall Plan, referring to the post-war World War II US aid program for Europe to rebuild Ukraine. She made the comment at the Ukraine Recovery Conference taking place in Switzerland right now. But she also says the program needs to be driven by Ukraine itself, and there should be an immediate push to support Ukrainians' return to their homeland. According to Ms. Truss, it is important to give people hope about the future. And EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the Kremlin's goal is the military, political and economic destruction of Ukraine, and that Russia wants to undermine Ukraine's very existence as a state, and that this could not be allowed to happen. The EU, she says, will set up a reconstruction platform to coordinate the rebuilding of Ukraine once the war ends. A platform will be used to map investment needs, coordinate action and channel resources. Finally, Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal says his country needs $750 billion for a recovery plan in the wake of the Russian invasion. He was also speaking at the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Switzerland. He told the audience there had been over $100 billion of direct damage to infrastructure from the Russian aggression. The two-day conference, held in Lugano, had already heard from President Volodymyr Zelensky. It's bringing together several world leaders and NGOs with the aim of drawing up a roadmap for Ukraine's reconstruction after the war. In the meantime, all the way from Russia, President Vladimir Putin has congratulated his troops for what he describes as liberating the eastern region of Luhansk, a significant milestone for Moscow in its military campaign in Ukraine. During a televised meeting with Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, the Russian president said troops involved in the operation to capture Luhansk should rest, but that other military units should continue fighting. He also asked the defense minister to give a state award to all service personnel who have excelled during the military action. He said he knew there were a lot of brave, professional and gutsy soldiers in the Russian army, and that they should all be decorated with all the relevant state awards. But there will be no good wishes coming from the Russian president to his American counterpart, Joe Biden, this July 4th, according to government spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. This is because this year has seen a culmination of the United States' unfriendly policies towards Russia. So, given the present circumstances, he said, sending a congratulatory cable can hardly be considered appropriate. Americans are celebrating Independence Day today, with President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden hosting a 4th of July barbecue for military families on the south lawn of the White House this afternoon at local time. Later in the day, they will watch the Independence Day fireworks display at the National Mall. Circling back to Russia now, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Moscow will respond in kind to Bulgaria's expulsion of 70 Russian diplomats. Russia's ambassador to Bulgaria, an EU and NATO member state, and once a close ally of Russia, said last week she would ask Moscow to close its embassy in Sofia over the expulsions. The diplomats boarded 2 Russian government flights on Sunday evening and left the country. to Pope Francis's exclusive interview with the Reuters news agency, in which he says he hopes to be able to go to Moscow as soon as possible after a visit to Canada later this month. Speaking on the situation in Ukraine, Pope Francis noted that there have been contacts between Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov about possible trip to Moscow. And no pope has ever visited Moscow, and Francis has repeatedly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. When the Vatican first asked about a trip several months ago, Pope Francis said Moscow replied that it was not the right time. But he hinted that something may now have changed, and it is possible he would visit Moscow and Kyiv following his Canada trip. Since the Russian invasion in February, the 85-year-old pontiff has repeatedly condemned the conflict and called for peace. The Pope's health has also been of concern lately, but he says he has no plans to resign. He's also denied rumours he has cancer, joking that his doctors never told him anything about it. He also spoke about the knee condition that has prevented him from carrying out his duties. So thousands of people did pack central Tbilisi on Sunday evening in what is described as a strong show of support for a path for Georgia towards accession to the European Union and NATO. People, thousands of them you see there, waved EU and Ukraine flags in a peaceful rally in the city's centre. Back in June, the European Union's executive recommended that Ukraine and Moldova become candidates for membership, a milestone in their potential path from ex-Soviet republics to develop economies in the world's largest trading bloc. The Commission put conditions on Georgia's aspiration for membership candidacy, including electoral and judicial reforms in progress on media freedom. Russia fought a brief war with Georgia in 2008 and maintains a military presence in 2 disputed regions of the country. That rally with thousands of people in Tbilisi, the Georgian capital. Joining me now is Foreign Affairs commentator Collins Wake. He's in Brussels. Collins, thank you for joining me on the program. And let's begin with the Georgia membership of the EU and NATO. Now, they all applied about the same time as Ukraine, Moldova, Sweden, and even Finland, but they have been put on a waiting list. I remember the European Commission president saying that they had just a few obligations to fulfill. Will this be the end of the road for now for them towards membership of both organizations?
Thank you, Manager, for having me. Well, essentially, that question will best be answered by the political leaders of Georgia, because essentially, how they respond to the ongoing protests, to a large extent, will actually determine their fate. So far, their response, the response of government has been measured. And that is precisely one of those, issues that the EU has with Georgia in terms of, how deep the democracy is and how much the, courts are independent. And then, of course, there is also the issue of independence of the media. These are bits and pieces of issues that they have. And no one can actually be surprised that the European Commission actually, held back admitting them as candidate members because, prior to the decision, there had been, a resolution by the European Parliament actually requesting the Georgian government to do more in terms of these areas that I have highlighted. Now, what it also means is that the European integration is something that is very, very current in Georgia, and the European Union actually did not hesitate to congratulate the Georgian people for the Europeanness of the citizens, and they did not hesitate also to call out a certain Bidznia Ivanishvili, who was a prime minister and the founder of the ruling party, who is said to actually have the country in his pocket, actually working with Russia as well. He's in fact, the richest man in Georgia, and so he controls the economy. And of course, that is quite inconsistent with the European values. So those are the issues that they need changed. And once those are done, I believe that the path then is open to them, and which is why the protest is ongoing, because the protesters are actually requesting the current government to resign and hand over to an independent, government of national unity, who would then oversee the reforms requested by the EU and then enable them step into the path of candidacy for the European Union.
Very important point that you make, reminding us once again that Georgia has been an ally of Russia. And then, of course, these protests, we see them happening now and again against the Georgian government. It won't be the first time they've asked the president to step down. Now, countries are willing to join, these continental groups. I'm talking about NATO as well as the European Union for the protection they give. And right now, it seems even more important that they join either of those groups because of Russia. And everyone seems to be afraid of Russia, right? Do you think that Georgia's safety is in jeopardy without membership to these organizations?
Not in the immediate. And the reason is not because Russia would not like to, play some bad games in Georgia and other neighboring, former countries of the Soviet Union. But it is simply because they are overstretched at this point militarily. I mean, they have actually unleashed the entire arsenal of Russian military into Ukraine, because Ukraine is so very, very important to them. So they are kind of left high and dry in terms of the military resources and personnel needed to invade other countries. So that is actually the stumbling block for Russia, but that is exactly the reason that these countries are actually rushing to kind of gain some protection from the European Union. I mean, that is quite apart from the fact that, it is not something that happened overnight. Some of these countries, I mean, talk to their citizens, visit those countries, you will actually see how different they are from Russia, who, has maintained centrally the, Soviet Union mentality. They may have transited, but of course their leader, since, the breakup, has remained regretful and somehow still acting as if it is a communist society, whereas other members of the present-day Commonwealth of Independent States, the former Soviet Union, have more or less embraced, democracy and European value, and are looking forward to further deepening of, their alliances with Europe and, the European integration. So yes, they feel comfortable within the European family, and, they can't really wait to gain further, protection from them.
Yeah, and that'll be really important for them. Georgia being a close ally to Russia, it might see that as a threat in joining any of these organizations. But there is a very happy President Vladimir Putin in Russia at the moment. Of course, with the Russian forces capturing Lysychansk on Sunday. How much of a loss is this for Ukraine?
It is a heavy loss. The capture of Pristina is indeed a major victory for Russia. And, military analysts that I have listened to actually tend to, project that there will be more or so gains for Russia in the coming days. However, more optimistic pictures have been painted of, again, the overstretching of the Russian military resources, such that they are probably not going to be able to be present in all of these military, in all of these cities that they have captured, which means that there is still the chance of Ukraine, seizing back those countries. So it may very well be that the smile we see on Vladimir Putin's face at this time is not going to be there for too long because it might be short-lived. But it's a matter of wait and see.
Yeah, indeed. And there is currently going on in Switzerland a Ukraine reconstruction conference. Leaders are looking to the future now. Liz Truss, the UK Foreign Secretary, did say, is suggesting a new Marshall Plan to be developed for Ukraine, but she wants the Ukrainians to drive it. How can they drive that when they're still in the middle of a war?
Well, if Liz Truss is insinuating that a reconstruction is going to begin now, there are reasons to, actually advise that she has a written. The war is still ongoing. The destruction is happening on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, the economists estimated that on a daily basis, 4 billion worth of destructions are ongoing. So it is even difficult, maybe even nearly impossible, to give an accurate estimate of the cost of reconstruction. At this moment, it has been placed at about 600 billion. Some are actually saying that it might go up to 1 trillion. Now, there are different ways, diplomatically and politically and economically, of actually estimating the damage, and that is the cost of reconstruction. But the one closest, to them and more current is actually using the formula that was deployed for the rebuilding of Afghanistan and Iraq, where they actually count, for example, the number of bridges in Ukraine. So far, 300 bridges have been, destroyed. So they use the cost of reconstructing the bridges in Iraq, Afghanistan, and then extrapolate it. Now, if you use that formula, you will find that the 600 billion that is estimated at this moment, which will be part of the Marshall Plan that Liz Truss talked about, will actually run into 1 trillion. So it is too early to begin that reconstruction, but I think it's a very, very important step to, have a conversation, a dialogue, and begin to, make out a plan so that as soon as the war is over, then they will move in, and indeed, it is something, an idea that enjoys broad acceptability that Ukrainians would have to drive that reconstruction effort. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, but apart from the EU and NATO, which is who they're looking to now, who else will be expected to contribute to this purse?
Well, let us pause a while. The EU, fine, but also we will recall that there have been a significant, number of Russian assets that have been seized. Now, part of the, sources for funding reconstruction is actually using from, those Russian assets, although there are still some questions around the legality. Of course, they will be looking at, private financiers. The European Bank for reconstruction and development, of course, would have to step in halfway loan, halfway, support from the European Commission. Of course, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the rest of them, one way or the other, are actually going to come in.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Collins. Really enjoy your analysis on this. Do have a lovely evening.
You too. Thank you for having me.